Can you hear us? Do we hear you? You want to take this one here? Guess what? Oh, just a minute. Yeah, look. Switch to gallery view. Scott Dunbar, can you hear us? That's McKenna.
Yeah, now I do. Wasn't a minute ago.
Hear me, I'm sure. Oh, goodness.
Hello? 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 Can you hear me now, Scott? Scott can. And Pat is hiding. Well,
Now, you're going to speak. Do we hear you? Somebody speak.
I can speak.
Scott, unmute and talk.
Okay. Here I am.
Are you unmuted?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I unmuted. Are you hearing me?
Please, if you don't mind.
Do I not hear you? No.
Yeah, I unmuted.
Yeah, now we're good.
Yeah, we just needed to hear that.
Hey, Pat, hi, Pat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hearing you.
Okay.
Scott's too low key.
And everyone can hear me then?
Wow.
I'm assuming.
Let me just
Yeah.
move it.
Okay.
Move it. Okay. Oh, Menachem is with us.
Am I
Good,
volunteering
well.
to be the idiot of the day?
I don't know. Need somebody to volunteer for lighting Shabbat candles, but whoever
I'll be the
wishes to
idiot of the day.
be volunteer. Well, Shabbat Shalom. I want to give, yeah. No, Pat McKenna's there and Edgar from Colombia is there. I want to give a special greeting to everybody online, everybody watching.
Special greeting. There's only two of them.
No, that's four. But yeah. Anyway,
Edgar.
I want to know, anybody, before we start the service, has anything they have done to make the world a better place? Anybody they help? Any good news to share? Yes.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a couple- No, but they eat on. Well, I had an interesting experience. On Monday, I had the surgery. As the nurse was trying to put the thing, she tried like 3 times. She wasn't able to call somebody else. But she said, "You have very thick skin. What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a rabbi." She said, "Oh, wow, that's interesting because normally like construction workers have very thick skin." I say, "Honey, you have no idea how much more it's needed in my profession." But and then the doctor, who's a nice guy, he was described to me by my doctor, who recommended him as a guy who was very good doctor. You can see he runs it very tight ship, but very quiet, and and he's like a lapsed Jew. He doesn't practice, married a Christian woman, raised his kids Catholic. So I get there, he began talking to me. He's like a mummy. And I said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a rabbi." Oh, now he warmed up and said, "Oh, I'm a bad Jew." I said, "No, doctor." I said, "Doctor, you're wrong. There are no bad Jews. All Jews are good Jews." Now he warmed up to me. Now he told me all his story. I get there for surgery. I brought him a copy of my book. And I said, this is for you. Perhaps you're not a bad Jew, perhaps you're just an uninformed Jew. You can have it. And say, before you ask me to sign it for you, I won't until I see you again to see if I have good usage of my hand. Yes, yeah. He was charging enough. He doesn't need. He can well afford to buy. I don't know. I can tell him about it later. But I just, but above all, and then very, very strange. Why do you need full anesthesia for something in your hand, and then they tell you take all your clothes off, including your underwear, and put this gown to do this? I just want to clarify something. If by any chance there's a sex changing operation happening today, it's not mine. Because I'm a little puzzled here when you're asking for all this. But turns out certainly that the doctor is partners, if not total owner of. Right by ABC, past ABC, there's a hotel in the corner there with the interstate behind it. Very, very nice place. I mean, they did it very well. But I think it's through St. Luke, or through Menorah. I don't know. It's through the, I don't know. I'll have to check. I don't know. It's through a system. Anyway, anybody else?
I wanted to share with you.
Share.
I've already converted all of my investments and retirements to ESG, to environmentally responsible, good governance, and all of those things that I sent out and discussed the other week, and feels good. I personally made the stock market crash, of course.
Thanks, John.
Pardon?
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
I did it. I just did it for everybody. And the other thing I did that was wonderful is I spent the whole day today, afternoon, going over the Tim Snyder's brief snippet on, it was on MSNBC. He's a historian of Ukraine. He's Ukrainian, Russian origin. And he pointed out that he's been the guy who promulgated that term, the big lie, over the last 3 years. It was basically, Adolf Hitler's publicist who developed that.
Oh.
And he said that if it's so monstrous a lie, nobody can believe that you could possibly be lie about something that big. So it must be true. And once you're hooked in and do something, you're in. And so anyway, the importance of that, of course, with respect to Russia and Ukraine is obvious. And so that's how I spent the day. I didn't make the world better, but it clarified me about what's going on a little bit. It's very, very simple.
Anybody else? No?
My mom's birthday was last Saturday, so
Very
we
good.
got
I hope
to
you did
celebrate
something
that.
nice to your mom.
Yep.
Good.
Mhm.
So that's very good. So, and then, we have Mother's Day coming. When's Mother's Day? It's the 8th. But, I'll point out to you again, but when it's Mother's Day in Israel? It is on the yard side of Henrietta Zolt.
Mm.
But she was the mother of Israel because she was homely. So the rabbi that she liked married a cute girl that she used to work with. Married a cute girl, so she became. Happened.
Is your thing working?
Yeah, I'm just fine. You can tell.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, and you cannot. Well,
No,
this is
nowhere near.
this
you.
is.
We need a piece of tape.
Okay,
Let's
wait,
steal
maybe now this.
Let's steal your.
Wait, is it
this thing
better
is
now?
on, right?
Yeah, no, this. Go there. I
No,
think it's better.
your pocket thing. Does that show one? No, the thing, this. There, right here. Does that show the one on? No.
Okay,
Okay,
now, sorry, maybe you are correct.
I know we
Okay,
didn't-
let's
I know
try.
I was deaf, dumb, and blind.
Yeah, well, anyway, on this happy note, we will open the service on page
6, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem.
All right. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu. Bokim l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Melech malachei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu. Tzidkei l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Melech malachei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu.
Good. Now we continue on page 7 with the kindling of Sabbath lights. Is there anyone who wishes to be volunteer? Roseanne, thank you. Roseanne was faster.
Gotta give this to. Yeah.
Come, let us welcome Shabbat. May its radiance warm our hearts as we kindle these tapers.
Light is the symbol of presence in our life, in our salvation.
Light is the symbol of the holiness within each of us. The human spirit is the light of God. Light is the symbol of Israel's mission, as it is written, I have made you a covenant people to serve as a light to the nations.
Therefore, in the spirit of ancient tradition,
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu adlik ner shel Shabbat. We praise our eternal God, creator of the universe, who hallows our lives through laws and ethical teachings. We are mindful of these timeless values as we kindle the lights of Shabbat.
make Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
I forgot to tell you something very interesting that relates to Yom HaShoah. My initial comments. I think it's worthy stopping here to tell you. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah. And I don't know how many of you remember, I think 10, 12 years ago, when Bill Tameos and I, more than even, when we wrote a book about the Holocaust. And then we had an event at the public library. There was a guy by the name of Siggy Allwise. And he was a short white-haired Jew, had been a survivor, and we got friends with him. He has since passed away. His daughter is a journalist, and she lives in Detroit. And I just got a notice from her yesterday about something that happened to her on Yom HaShoah, and the kind of stuff that only happens. I have only heard it like in the news, having somebody else, never to anybody I know. So apparently they had a whole family, the Holocaust happens, people disappear, you don't know who's where, who went where. So there are two brothers who survived and came to America, and they went to Detroit, or they had a gas station, the regular American story. But she just found out yesterday that another of his brothers, also survived and went to Russia and lived in Russia his whole life, eventually made Aliyah to Israel. And because he always spelled his name wrong, he spelled it Alvais, Alvais, instead of Alwiess, could never find his sibling. But all the siblings are dead by now. In fact, this guy had a son. The son is dead by now, but the granddaughter is alive. And the granddaughter has just been in touch with Sigi Alwai's daughter. And she shared with me, this is really, really cool, and the kind of stuff that you really only see happening in, in stories that you hear like on Jewish Telegraphical Agency. And then you ask yourself, how the hell is it possible? 70 years after the fact, how they didn't find each other after 70 years? Apparently, they didn't look right. If you look for a different, there's no different spelling. And I don't know, I was watching the Yad Vashem Holocaust ceremony. Was very, very nice. I don't know how, and when I got it, I sent to John. I said, I don't know how many of you did watch it. It's tape. It's really, really worthwhile watching. And I also heard something, like I heard somebody earlier on say something about the fact that the greatest shame of the Holocaust is the fact that even at the uprising, which is what the date would celebrate, the Jews did not fight as one. There were two different, separate Jewish groups fighting. There's Mordechai Anilevich on the left, the left side, and on the right, with the followers of Betar, was Pavel Frank. And Mordechai Anilevich is more celebrated because it's better known and because there's more of them. But there were two. Again, even at that moment, the Jews were not able to fight together. Even they managed not to fight each other at least, because they're fighting the Nazis. But they didn't fight together. They couldn't coordinate for that. And then the former chief rabbi of Israel, Lau, who's a cousin to my grandmother, as I might have told you already, his speech was about unity. That. When the Nazis were killing Jews, they didn't care about Reform Jew, Orthodox Jew. They care about Jew. I listened to him speaking this morning when he said something that he went to a place, a torture room, and somebody has scrawled with his nail in Yiddish, Nun Ein Kuf Vav Mem Hey, Nekome. In Yiddish, in Hebrew, be nekama, means vengeance. And he said, my vengeance is that I'm here. I have how many children I have, how many grandchildren, how many great-grandchildren. Our vengeance against the Nazis that we're still here, still one. So, if you ever think, what can we do about, what's a positive answer about the issue of the Holocaust? Tolerate those horrible human beings that are the Orthodox Jews. So that's the job. Okay.
Put the mic on the other side.
I can try. I can try on this side, but then it goes out the other way. But anyway, what can we do to answer the proper response to the Holocaust would be try to be more united, even when you have to deal with the other horrible Jews in this town. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Well, there is an organization in this town called Brit Braja that does that. People. No, why nobody else getting that? And anyway, on this happy note, to be continued, I definitely, that's the next move, should be the next move. But then, it's yet another reason why I have been, personally persecuted by the reform movement on account of that. Until they began doing it, it was their idea. Anyway, We are on page 96, since it's the fifth service of the month, on the middle of the page. The synagogue is the sanctuary of Israel, born out of our longing to feel God's nearness. It has been to the Jewish people throughout our wanderings a visible token of the presence of God in our people's midst. Its beauty is the beauty of holiness, steadfast. It has stood as the champion of justice, mercy, and peace. Come, let us sing unto God. Let us raise our voices in joy to the source of all life.
Let us come into God's presence with thanksgiving. Let our voices ring out in joyful song.
Sing unto the eternal God. Let us proclaim God's guiding power from day to day.
Honor and majesty are before you. Strength and beauty are in your sanctuary.
Worship the eternal God in the beauty of holiness. Let all the earth give praise to our Creator.
Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the field and all that is therein.
Let the righteous be glad in God's presence and give thanks for God's everlasting goodness.
Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onek Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onek Shabbat. Mekadoshei, mekadoshei shevei Shabbat, kulam yisme'u, v'yitangu metu v'chashabat, uvashvi ratzita bo v'kidash Shabbat, chemdat yamim, oto karat v'shabbat, zecher l'maseh v'reshit Shabbat, zecher l'maseh v'reshit Shabbat, yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onek Shabbat, yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onek Shabbat.
Now we continue with the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkada veitkada shemeraba, be'amad ivrach irte ve'alich v'chute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayed chol beit Yisrael, bagala, bagala, u'vizman kariv, ve'ru, amen. Yeshem Rabba Bevorach, Leolam Uleome Amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach V'ishtabach, V'yitpar V'yitroma V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitale, V'yitalal, Shemere Korsha B'richu, Leila Mincho B'chata V'shirata, Tush bechata v'nechemata, tameron be'alma, ve'ru, amen.
Now please rise for the call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, on page 99. Baruch Hu et Adonai Amvorach, praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due. Baruch Adonai Amvorach, le'olam va'ed.
Let us praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due, now and forever.
La 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach. המבורך לעולם ועד. המבורך לעולם ועד.
Page 100. We praise you, eternal God, creator of the universe, by whose laws the shadows of evening fall, and the gates of each new day are open. In wisdom, you have established the change of times and seasons, and ordered the ways of the stars, their heavenly courses. You are the creator of heaven and earth, the source of all life. We praise you for the day and its work, and for the night and its rest. Next page.
Led us in the ways of righteousness and brought us to the light of truth. Therefore, as our lying down and our rising up, we will meditate on the Torah's teachings, finding within it the inspiration and guidance for our daily lives. May your love never depart from our hearts. We praise you, O God, and reveal your love to our people.
Together on page 102, we affirm Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the eternal is our God, the eternal God is one. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Let us praise God, rules in glory forever and ever.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Now may be seated as we continue with the Ve'ahavta in Hebrew on page 103. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
You shall love the eternal God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your mind. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be upon your heart, shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently unto your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and when you rise up. You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a symbol before your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house, and upon your gates, and upon your gates, that you may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God.
On page 105, pray responsibly. The eternal truth is that we worship only one God and there is none else.
Through God's power alone has our people Israel been redeemed from the hand of oppressors.
Great deeds God has wrought on our behalf and wonders without number.
God has kept us in life and has not let our people's footsteps falter.
The Eternal One was with us during the long years of oppression. Our faith sustained us, even when our people suffered the deepest anguish.
Now that we live in this land of freedom, may we continue to be faithful to God and the teachings of Torah.
May God's way guide the lives of all our people and unite our hearts in friendship.
O God, our refuge and our hope, we sing your praise as did our people in ancient days.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedaba kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. מלכותך ובענך, בוקר יום ונשי, זלינו ואמרו, זלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה.
Middle of page 106. Oh God, help us to find meaning in our hopes, in our struggles, and our strivings. Without the sense of your presence, we would feel lost and empty. When all else fails us, we turn to you. In the stillness of the night, when the outer darkness enters the soul, in the press of the crowd, when we walk alone, though yearning for companionship, and when in agony, we are bystanders of our own confusion, we look to you for hope and peace.
We do not ask for a life of ease, for happiness without pain or disappointment. Instead, we ask you to teach us to be uncomplaining and unafraid. In our darkness, help us to find your light. In our loneliness, may we discover that many spirits are akin to our own. Give us strength to face the future with hope and courage, so that even from life's discords and conflicts, we may draw blessing.
Make us understand that we are called on not only to enjoy the richness of the earth, but to exalt in heights attained after the toil of climbing. Let our darkness be dispelled by your love, that we may rise above fear and failure, our steps sustained by faith. You give meaning to our lives. You are our support and our guide.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ונפש, שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Now we rise on page 108 for the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufiach itohilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, v'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, Elion, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imachot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ושרת שרה.
We praise you, God of our mothers and fathers, God of Abraham, God of Sarah, God of all generations. You bestow loving kindness on all your people. You remember the devotion of those who came before us. As you guided our ancestors with love, you offer hope to us, their descendants. Your creator and helper, our guide and protector. We praise you, eternal God, shield of Abraham and help of Sarah. Continue. Our God and God of our fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a heritage has come down to us through the long journey our people have traveled.
Our God and God of our mothers, God of Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, the great legacy has been passed down to us.
When others worship gods indifferent to goodness, our mothers and fathers turn to the one whose law unites all people in justice and love.
Knowledge was a secret for princes and priests. Sages opened their doors to all who sought understanding.
In a world where the weak were tormented by oppressors, our Torah taught us to love the poor and the stranger.
Whether we were sovereign, we were taught to seek peace and pursue it.
All this now is ours. Ours the teaching, ours the task to make our heritage live.
Great is our love and the length of our days.
Continue.
Infinite
Infinite,
is your power, O God. Grant is your gift of life. In loving kindness, you sustain the world. Through the endless flow of your blessings, you preserve all of creation. You uphold the falling and heal the sick. Free the captive and keep faith with your children in death as in life. Who is like you, author of life and death? By your will and ours, good shall prevail.
we praise you, God, the source of eternal.
eternal life.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה, רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומתו מלך, מלך מבית ומחיה ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Page 111. You are with us in our prayer, in our love, and even in our doubts, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, when doubts trouble us, when anxiety makes us tremble, and pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. Your worship brings us closer to one another, so that together we may be strengthened in our devotion to you.
Our God and God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our worship on this Shabbat may be acceptable to you. Sanctify us through your precepts, the fear and the blessings of the Torah. Help us to be satisfied with the gifts of your goodness, grateful for all that you bestow. Purify our hearts that we may serve you in truth. May we preserve Shabbat as our people's heritage from generation to generation, and that it will ever bring rest and joy, peace and comfort to our lives. Praise the eternal God who sanctifies Shabbat.
And you may be seated. Page 113, 113. Bless all who have gathered here. May our worship be worthy of your greatness and your love. May all who seek your presence may find it here. For the joy of community, the gift of human diversity, and the vision of universal harmony, we offer grateful thanks.
Bless our nation and its inhabitants. Inspire us to pursue only the worthiest of endeavors. Be with those who have chosen to lead us, that may strive to establish justice and opportunity for all. May they labor to bring peace to the family of nations.
Bless the entire household of our people Israel, wherever we dwell. May your favor rest on the land of Israel, its diverse people and faith communities. Protect Israel against hatred and war. Grant that the promise of its rebirth soon may be fulfilled in peace and harmony. Be with us here where we worship you in freedom. May those who continue to live under oppressive conditions soon find release and liberty. Amen. Next page.
We gratefully acknowledge the eternal God as our creator and preserver, the rock of our life and the shield of our health. We thank God and sing praises for the gift of life itself, for ourselves and are ever in God's keeping, the signs of our Creator's presence that we encounter every day, and for God's wondrous gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. Truly our blessings are without end, and God's loving kindness never ceases. Therefore do we forever put our trust in the Eternal One.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atah melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atah melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Omcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov berecha levorech et Omcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
Prior to silent prayer, that's our practice, we turn in our prayer books to page 10, the prayer of those who are in need of healing. And I am happy to tell you that, as I said earlier, I saw Nancy's turn this week, and she's way better. She had surgery, and she's in a rehab facility on it's near the Blue Moose, proving to you that I'm always going to be fat because I can't think of the name of the street, but I can think exactly what restaurant is nearby. You know where it is, in Overland Park. On, I don't know, again, near the Blue Moose. You know, there's a big shopping area, it's right there. Anybody wants to go, I'll dig out the address for you. It seems to be way better, and I'm very happy to see that. She had cancer. Yeah, Yeah, she's gonna have chemotherapy, but she's not happy about it. They remove internal hysterectomy. But she's not gonna be having any more babies. She's having chemo. She's had some, she's gonna have more. But she's up and about and almost back to herself, which is good. Anyway, on page 10, prayer invites God's presence to lift our spirits. It allows the blessing and gift of hope to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to part fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. For prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. Shabbat, we pray for the following members of our congregation, relatives of members of our congregation: Nancy Stern, Gary Kashner, Marvin Aaron, Mike Herman, Wayne Owen, Martha Katz, Louise Diane Bergson, Felicia Wax, Ray Barker, Octomay, Lily Montgomery, to Jeffrey Lazar. And on behalf of my best client on the prayer line, which is Pat McKenna, Mike Beckard, Annie Beckard, Brian Beckard, Mary Lou Beckard, Bailey Swales, and Elvin Henley. And I'm harassing her over text as well, because I told her that not being present, she could have only 4. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, but she's here. Anybody else? Baldwin and Lou. Lou is one of my long-standing client. Yeah. Anybody
And all
else?
those who are being wounded daily in Ukraine.
Anybody else? Anybody online? Yeah, people are being wounded everywhere these days. In Israel as well. Okay, so we pray for all people.
Who at this hour are in sickness, in want, or in distress of body and spirit. We name in our hearts those who are near to us and in whose pain we feel pain. Let them know your help and feel your presence, realizing that they are not alone.
מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. מי שבנחמותינו מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with a full shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Pause for a moment of silent prayer using the words in our prayer books or those in our page 116 of our prayer book.
רצונים רפים ויום ליבי צורי וגולי, צורי וגולי.
Oh, I guess maybe as I begin getting older, I begin getting more nostalgic. And this portion, Acharei Mot, was not my bar mitzvah, it's one that I know very, very well. Because when I was in rabbinical school, one of my teachers liked me a lot, and having this choice of maybe 100 rabbinical students there to hire to train his son for bar mitzvah, he hired me, which was very nice. And fast forward, by the way, it's even nicer, because eventually that boy grew up, got married in Tampa, and they called me to do the wedding as well. So it was very, very nice. And it's a wonderful guy. Anyway, so, and his Torah portion was Acharei Mot, and was kind of a little harsh, because try to read the whole portion with him. It talks about all kinds of relating to sex. So that's what you're going to be doing with a 13-year-old boy who's the son of one of your teachers. But, then on another nostalgic note, I remember then when I was at another temple in this town, for a while, say if I would buy some books or something, everything would come to the temple. And you may not remember, but maybe 20 years ago or so, there was a time that people were getting letters in the mail with anthrax and all kinds of stuff. So I would tell the secretary, who, by the way, couldn't care less. I mean, she did her job just with no excitement. She didn't care about anything. She might as well been serving her sentence. So she didn't care about anything related to Judah. She just did her job. But then some stuff comes in a book, and I ask her, look, what did come in? She says, oh, here's your mail, Rabbi. And there was a book in it, but if you don't mind, I want to have a look at it. I was quite excited. Look, she's all of a sudden being interested. Turns out the book was Michael Gold's book called Does God Belong in the Bedroom? Does God Belong in the Bedroom? It's a book that deals with Judaism and sexuality. So, even though the book is, I don't know, over 20, maybe even 30 years old, it's certainly some of the ideas there it would be different. I trust, the world is different for sure this time. But, still, the main question, I think, is still answered by yes. The idea hasn't changed. God does belong in the bedroom. Sex is not a casual recreational activity, but something with profound religious implications. And since I began my evening here at Temple telling Fred a Talmudic story in the lobby, there's another exciting one in the Talmud, a rather humorous one, it's in Berachot 62a, the story of Rav Kahana. He hid under the bed of his teacher, Rav, and listened as Rav made love to his wife. Finally, when apparently they were done, Kahana crawled out from under the bed and commented, it sounded like you never tasted a cooked dish before. That kind of means that he really enjoyed himself too much. Rav replied, Kahana, is that you? Probably because they were in the dark. The Talmud says you should do it in the dark, by the way, I forgot that. Get out of here. This is rude, it's not appropriate behavior. Rabbi Kahana answered, this is Torah, and I came here to learn. I want to learn it also. Certainly, the Talmud is not recommending it's appropriate to hide under the bed of your teacher, your rabbi, but it's nonetheless implying that sex is a religious activity. This week's Torah portion lists, as I mentioned earlier, a long list of sexual activities, the forbidden ones. And this chapter was considered important enough by the rabbis that they chose it for the Torah reading on Yom Kippur afternoon. It does contain the famous verse that is attributed to talk about homosexuality, but if one day you care, I'll explain to you why it doesn't. the one that says a man should not lie with another man like as if it was a woman. It's forbidden. It's what does it say? It's a toiva. It's abomination. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Trust me. I can explain to you later. I may even talk about it next week. We'll see. But most of the forbidden activities include many forms of incest, a sexual activity that undermines family life. But what's fascinating is the phrase that the Torah uses to define all forbidden sexual activity. It says uncovering nakedness. It is Gilui Arayot in Hebrew. I'll give you an example. In this week's Torah portion, Leviticus 18:6, none of you shall come near anyone of his own flesh to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. So this uncovering nakedness is Gilui Arayot. And is one of the three, in fact, it's considered such a bad thing. It's one of the three fundamental sins that you would rather die rather than having to do it. So one is Gilui Arayot, incest. The other one is to spilling blood. Somebody comes to you and says, either you kill him or I'll kill you. You should say, okay, kill me, because I can't kill him. And the last one would be worshiping idols. And it's interesting because in the very beginning of the Bible, we learn in the Garden of Eden, the primordial man and woman, they were naked but not ashamed. So they were like the animals or children. Those are naked and not ashamed. And then when they ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge between good and evil, then when they became fully human and they became embarrassed by their nakedness and they cover up. Jewish sexual ethics then teaches that we only uncover our nakedness with the appropriate person in the appropriate situation. When you talk about with Catholics, in the issue of sexual ethics, I find interesting. I've heard other people, Jews who do that. They use the writings of a philosopher called Thomas Nagel. And Nagel is a phenomenologist, a branch of philosophy which is concerned not with what is happening in the physical world, but rather within people's minds, what people are thinking. His most famous essay is called, What is it like to be a bat? Can we imagine the mental world of a bat who flies around blind and has to use sonar to navigate? And he also has an essay in sexual ethics called Sexual Perversion. What is going through the mind of someone in a sexual encounter? He imagines Romeo and Juliet seeing each other across the room. Then Romeo becomes sexually attracted to Juliet. At this point, he is the subject and she is the object. In normal sexual encounters, she also becomes the subject and he the object. There is a mutuality, both sides being subject to being object and subject successively. According to Nagel, sexual perversion is when this process is truncated. One partner is the subject and the other is the object with no mutuality. It is one human being used by another human as object, not being seen as a person. And I find this Nagel's essay, which deals with sexual ethics from a secular standpoint, a secular point of view, a great description of the biblical idea of Gilui Arayot, of uncovering nakedness. Only when there is mutuality, when there's consent on both sides, each seeing the other as both the subject and the object, would sex be appropriate. I'm not saying this can happen only within marriage, although according to Jewish tradition, that's the ideal, but the rabbis recognize that even within marriage, one partner can treat the other as an object. That's why it's forbidden by Jewish law for a husband to force himself to his wife. In fact, understanding human nature, that's why in Jewish tradition, sex is a wife's right in a husband's relation, not the other way around, as it would be in Christianity. This week's Torah portion raises many tricky questions about sexual ethics, but at the end of the day, it teaches us, as Rabbi Gold once said, that God does belong in the bedroom. Shabbat Shalom. Any comments, complaints, remarks? Anybody wants to share their own experiences? Ask Joyce. I'll tell the story about the Mexican hat dance that I invented, in which she's the object of my making up this myth. A myth that shall remain forever in the history of Brit Braja. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Good. In that case, we continue on page 368 for the adoration. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו.
Let us adore the ever-living God. We offer praise unto you, who spread out the heavens and established the earth. Your glory is revealed in the heavens above, and your greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are God, there is none else.
We bow our heads in reverence before the Eternal One, source of all life.
ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Existence of God, worshipped on the earth. When unbelief shall disappear and error be no more. Fervently we pray that the day may come when all people shall be guided by your teachings. Corruption and evil shall give way to purity and goodness. Superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. Then all who dwell on earth shall know that to you alone every knee shall bend, and every voice give praise. May all created in your image recognize we are brothers and sisters, so that one in spirit and one in harmony, we may be forever united before you. Then shall your reign be established on earth, and the word of your ancient prophet be fulfilled. The eternal God will reign forever and ever.
On that day, the Eternal shall be one, and God's name shall be one.
Bayohahu, Bayohahu, Hine Adonai Echad, Ushamo, Ushamo, Ushamo Echad.
When cherished ties are broken and fond hopes shatter, only faith and confidence can lighten the heaviness of the heart. The pain of separation is hard to bear, but to become despondent from our sorrow will only embitter our grief. The psalmist said that in his affliction, he learned the law of God. Indeed, our grief will have value. It sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are sorrow-stricken. Though absent, the departed still nurture our spirits, teaching us greater patience, faithfulness, and devotion. In the remembrance of their virtues and affections, the best and purest part of their nature lie eternally enshrined. Let us lift our head in hope and summon our strength to carry on. We dwell in the shelter of the eternal God, who is our refuge and our fortress. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, the 6 million who perished in the Shoah. And those of every race, nation, and faith whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. This Shabbat, we remember, first of all, anybody is observing Yeshiva, we definitely remember all the people still dying in Eastern Europe and in Israel, victims of terror, who was? Yeah, I know. Who was she?
Oh, it's tomorrow, so it'll be next week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry to hear. Okay, and then anybody, so that's Shivas. Anybody has your Shloshim, a 30-day mourning period? As far as yortzites go, Temple Israel remembers John P. Fleck, I have no idea who's related to, Lionel Fedotin, the father of Dr. Michael Fedotin, F.L. Tui, the father of Catherine Bortnick, and Richard Stern is the brother of Nancy Stern. Anybody else has a yortzeit? The departed who we now remember have entered into the peace of life eternal. They still live on earth in the acts of goodness they perform in the hearts of those who cherish their memory. May the beauty of their lives abide among us, a loving benediction. Now, as a community of mourners, we turn to page 375 and join me in the ancient words of the Kaddish. Itkadal ve'itkadash shemei rabba, ve'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, ve'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Itbarach ve'ishtabach, itba'ar ve'itramam ve'itnaseh, ve'itadar ve'itale ve'italal shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata ve'shirata, tushbechata ve'nechemata, ve'amiram be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, ve'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Uyaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Israel, ve'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort all who are bereaved among us, and let us say, amen. You may be seated. We certainly, I know, had a donation memory of Sophie Keshner, who is Gary's mom, and I know FL Tui by Dr. and Mrs. Bortnick, and in honor of Richard Stern by Nancy Stern. I want to thank Theo profusely for his wonderful singing and stuff. And what else? What else we have going on?
Well, thanks for coming and giving us a sermon and teach us all about sex. And
I figure at some point you might as well learn.
we might at some point at
Oh,
some
so-
point in my life I should learn. Yeah. Reminder that we have a board meeting a week from 2 weeks, basically a week and a half from now, and then the annual meeting is going to be on the 13th of May, and we're looking for volunteers to be board members. Of those who are not here, we'll search others and see if we can drag them in, and we need a treasurer as well.
Apparently. That's all I know.
I'm sorry,
She wise up.
she's retiring from all useful activity.
Good. So soon as have concluding prayer and final benediction, and then Denise will present to you our dinner ultimatum. Sorry. If you want me to go there, I should tell you later. What are we concluding with, Theo?
Oseh Shalom 429. 429.
429.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
concluding our services, I ask God's blessings on us. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless us and keep us. Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'chuneka. May God look kindly on us and ever be gracious to us. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God show us tenderness and give us shalom, peace. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, the people online. Behave yourselves. No fight.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Shabbat shalom, Ravi.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.